It was a close race, but in the end, Kirk Watson is once again mayor of Austin. Last night, Watson beat former state representative Celia Israel in a runoff election. Today, he joins us to discuss what's next. Mayor-elect Watson, welcome and congratulations.
Thank you very much. I'm very excited and happy.
Well, how are you feeling? I know you say you're excited, but how else are you feeling?
Well, I'm very grateful. This is the third time that I've been elected mayor of Austin, and I'm just as happy and grateful to the voters uh, now as I was 25 years ago when I was first elected mayor of Austin. I'm also excited because I just see so much potential for what we can do in meeting the challenges of this city that we all love so much.
Well, speaking of which, it was a tight race. You won with
Yeah.
866 votes. You lost Travis County, but you won Williamson and Hayes County. What are you going to do to win back the people who didn't vote for you?
Oh, for me, first of all, I lost Travis County by 17 votes. Isn't it amazing how close an election? It just goes to show how every vote does count. But you ask a really good question, and that's is this way. Look, we're best as a city when we're all together. And as I said last night, uh, I respect what many of the voters were looking for in the message that my opponent had. And it's a message that I have had for a long, long time. And that is that we need to have a city that focuses on equity and inclusivity and diversity. But what I hope I will be able to do is recognize that we all have one thing absolutely in common, and that is that we love this city. And when we have that in common, I think we'll be fine and we'll be able to meet the challenges and come together as a city.
Now, Celia Israel said she called you last night, but you guys didn't speak. Have you talked to her today? And if
Yes,
so,
we ultimately were able to speak. It was late, but we were able to speak, and we had a great conversation. And I'm very grateful to her too for the phone call.
do you care to share any other parts of that conversation with us?
Oh, no, because it's really between the two of us. Other than to say that it was a good conversation between two people that have known each other a long time and worked together for a long time.
Fair enough. Last night, you mentioned providing childcare is a priority for you. What's involved
Yes,
in this plan, and do you have a timeline?
I do have some of a timeline. In fact, today I've actually worked on this by reaching out to people that I consider to be expert and who advised me during the course of the campaign. The plan, I think, needs to be created by experts. And so, what we're going to do is on the very first day, I'm going to appoint a blue ribbon group to look at child care and early childhood development in Austin, Texas. The timeline for that is going to be a very short 90 days for them to come back and tell us what we as a city need to do and what we need to prepare for in order to become the best city in America to raise a child.
You also mentioned cost of living and affordability as emergency items. What is the first thing you plan to do to address these issues?
Well, I want to, housing has to be first and foremost, and I'll come right back to that. But part of affordability is making sure that people have more money in their pockets. We can make something affordable by reducing the price or subsidizing it in some way, but it's also by money in people's pockets. And that child care aspect is very important because many times childcare is the second largest expense in a household behind housing costs. So if we're able to do better with regard to childcare, we're going to do better with regard to affordability. But when it comes to housing, which is a key part of it, we're going to have to do some things that speed up the ability to get houses on the ground. We're going to have to make some land development code changes where it makes easier to get more housing and more density in Austin. And we're going to also have to do those kinds of things that focus, for example, on the Project Connect rail corridor. I've said many times that when that passed, it was not just a transit foundation, but it was also a housing foundation. And we're going to need to look immediately at the density that we want to have along those lines. And then when I talk about affordability, I talk about other things that the city can control, like taxes and fees. And as we move into a budget process, my experience before and my experience serving on the Senate Finance Committee dealing with the Texas state budget, I want us to look at ways that we do that budget so that we do a better job of keeping taxes low, because that also impacts cost of living in this city.
You know, affordability and traffic issues, some of the things you mentioned, garnered us the title Bum Steer Award from the Texas Monthly. What is your reaction to that?
Well, traffic is our perennial problem, right? I mean, it's something that whether you've been here a month or you've been here 40 years, you know how we have traffic problems. We have horrible congestion. There's about $25 billion of money that is currently available for us to work on transportation projects. Now, part of that is dealing with upgrading the airport and doing the airport. But a big chunk of that is I-35, Project Connect, and then a whole lot of additional money for other transportation improvements. What I want us to do is get moving on those things with a sense of immediacy, with a sense of urgency. And I also want us to be far more transparent than I feel like City Hall has been. I want us to have accountability sessions where what we do is the city reports out what is being worked on with like a 5-year running timeline, what's being built, what's not being built, where the money's going, so that we can show the improvements that we need to make, because there's no question we have a traffic problem and we have to do everything we can to address it.
But what's your reaction to us getting the Bum Steer Award?
What would you think? I just got elected mayor of a city that got the Bum Steer Award. I hate it. It's something that I think, unfortunately, Austin is getting to some degree a reputation that turns into something like that, and that's why I believe it is so very important to go in as mayor, to shake up City Hall and get us focusing on some of the very basics of local government that we need to focus on.
Here's another tough one for you. The city, as you know, broke off negotiations with the Austin Police Association for a new police contract earlier this month. It seems the Office of Police Oversight is the sticking point. How do you plan to address this?
Well, look, I've said from the very beginning that we have to have a robust and effective and transparent oversight program that by the way, I was the mayor when we first ever created an Office of Police Monitor. We didn't have an Office of Police Monitor until I was mayor and led on that. So, but you have to have oversight, and I want people to get back to the table and get back to negotiation. Now, there's also going to be an election in May. As you know, there was a petition drive that has been certified, and the council voted to put it on the ballot in May. And it has some very specific things about what happens with regard to police oversight and accountability. Things like allowing for greater access to files of an officer. It also sets time limits that are longer for the chief to act when it comes to holding somebody accountable. So that'll be on the ballot, and the public will have an opportunity to look at that in May.
Do you support that ballot measure?
Well, yes, and what I've also said is that I support making sure that the public has the opportunity to vote on it. I believe that we ought to be able to have a police contract that's a negotiated police contract that meets the public's needs with regard to accountability and the transparency of that accountability. But there's nothing in that I would oppose from the standpoint of wanting to have a system of a good system of accountability. I'll say one other thing about this. We've created this, in my view, we've created a false winner-take-all choice when it comes to policing. I believe very strongly that we can have a just policing system By that, I mean meeting Austin's values. But in order to do that, we have to do a good job of recruiting, training, providing supervision, and an accountability system that is transparent and effective. That is not a binary choice with having a fully staffed police department. But because we've treated them as binary choices, we've got ourselves into a problem, and we're having difficulty staffing. And I frankly think that if we don't have a contract, it adds to our problem in terms of recruiting and getting staffing.
Well, a lot of people say it's also dangerous to not have a contract in place.
Well, it hurt on both sides. It's not good because of what the default ends up happening. That's why I encourage everybody to get back to the table. I know we're in the holidays, but let's get back to the negotiation table. And I will tell you that this is a priority of mine because I think it's very important for us to have that contract in place. We can't recruit the way we want to if we don't have that contract. It sends exactly the wrong message. We also need to work on our training facilities and make sure we have the ability to have more cadets and more officers in training. And I think we have to probably look at how we create some financial incentives for the police officers that are already there to stay there, because we can't afford to have increased attrition at a time when we're not getting enough cadets, because that just keeps driving us into a hole.
Mayor-elect, what else can voters expect from you and your term?
Well, a number of things. We've talked about a lot of things already, but I will tell you, they ought to expect that what they're going to get is someone that is going to be very thoughtful. I'm going to be team oriented. That's how I've always been. I want to listen. I want to learn, but I'm going to move rapidly. I'm going to push to move rapidly, because I think we've reached a point in Austin where we're no longer becoming a big city. We are a big city with big city challenges. And that means we have to focus on the basics of governing, and we have to do it in a way with that urgency, so that we don't put at risk the things we love about our city.
Mayor-elect Kirk Watson, thank you so much for answering our questions and for your time again, and congratulations once again.
Thank you. I appreciate your questions, appreciate you doing this, and I thank the voters of Austin. I look forward to working with you again.